In this video, we're going to have a look at the three different roles that exist inside of a Scrum team. Now, Scrum teams are designed to try and get people to do the best work that they can. But in order to do so, we need to have three different roles that will allow us to focus on very specific elements. We're going to have a look at these three roles, talk through some of the characteristics for each of them, and look to see what sort of people would be best suited to take on these positions within a team. So the three roles themselves are fairly straightforward. The first of these is the product owner. This is one of the first members inside of the Scrum team. The idea of the product owner is the person that's going to be responsible for what the product should look like and for also maintaining the product backlog inside of a project. The next person we have is the Scrum Master, and this is really the person that's in charge of making sure that the team as a team perform well in what they're trying to do. They are there to facilitate meetings, they're there to help to remove blockers, and they're there as a sounding board for any ideas that people might have. And then finally, we've got the role of the development team themselves. And these are the people that actually create the product that's being envisaged by the product owner and ultimately the customers that you're working for. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of these roles individually. We'll have a little bit more of a talk about what they all do, and hopefully from there you'll get a bit more of an understanding about why we need to have these things present within a team. So within a Scrum team, the product owner is really seen as the voice of a customer. It can be beneficial to have the customer on site all the time. However, the challenge with that is that the customer is also having to put aside additional time, money, and effort to be made available. The alternative to this is to have a product owner on site that acts as the voice of the customer, and they're really there as the only way that you are communicating as a Scrum team with the client. They're there to be that single point of contact. Their main responsibility in the project is to look after the product backlog. They're the ones that are responsible for trying to determine the scope of any stories that are being created, the story quality, to ensure that any stories that are being created are of a good enough quality that we can understand what's meant by them, to ensure that when we are looking at stories and how they're going to be used, they're ready for sprint planning. And they're also really there to ensure that this ROI for customers, this return on investment, is key and it's apparent for what's going to be happening. Okay, because again, we need to make sure that any time that we're making something as part of a sprint, it's going to be adding value to the customer. So the product owner really is the sole person responsible for managing all of the things inside of a project that are related to the product backlog. They're responsible for clearly articulating all of the items inside of the backlog itself. They're in charge of making sure that the items inside of a backlog are ordered in the best way to achieve the goals and the missions for the customer and for the product that's being created. They're there to optimize the value of work for the team, to make sure that the team is working on the right things. They're also there to make sure that the product backlog itself is visible and transparent for the team and for outsiders to look at and to see what is going on. And they're also there to make sure that the development team understand what the product backlog is containing and why things are actually there in the first place. As well as all of this, the product owner may take on the responsibility of some development tasks inside of the team themselves, but this really depends on the amount of work that's required to get the product backlog into a state where it is ready to be used. So the product owner really sits in the middle of this diagram here. They have the authority to make decisions. Ultimately, they are the one that is responsible for ensuring that the work that is being carried out is the correct work to be carried out. They have to have the time available to be able to do this. So they need to be able to make sure that they have suitable time to sit down, go through the product backlog in a very, very detailed manner to ensure that it is at the best quality it can be. And they also need to have domain knowledge. So there's no point in having a product owner in place if they don't know anything about the system or the environment that the product that is being made is going to sit inside of. So it's vitally important that they have all three of these things, and that they are the best person to carry these things out within a team. Okay. Moving on, the next person inside of a team, the next role is the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master is really responsible for promoting and supporting Scrum activities within the group. They do this by helping everyone understand the Scrum values, the Scrum theories, and the different types of Scrum practice. So the person that's going to be taking on this role is probably going to be the one that understands more about Scrum and Agile principles more than anyone else. The role of Scrum Master is not to be seen as a manager inside of the team. It's more to be seen as a servant leader. So by servant leadership, what we mean is that they are there to help people inside of the team carry out the tasks that they are trying to carry out. If a person is coming up against any blocks, the servant leader is there to remove those blocks. If a person needs a sounding board to help to go over certain ideas, the servant leader is there to help with those types of activities as well. They're there to coach the team in self-organization and in this cross-functionality that we're trying to do. And we've talked about that before. Teams should feel empowered to do the tasks that they want to do. You should feel that you're a master in one area, but you're also able to take on tasks in lots of other areas as well. They help the development team to create high-value products by removing obstacles that are in their way. They try to facilitate the Scrum events as they're needed, and we're going to talk about the different Scrum events in the next video. And they also should be able to coach the development team in the organizational elements that are used to kind of make the team work as well as they can do. So their role is fairly wide-ranging, but it's mainly there as the glue that brings everyone together. They're the person that people are going to turn to when they are stuck and want some advice on the best way to proceed. Quite a lot of the roles of the Scrum Master are really down as coaching roles. I've included this picture here. This is called the Agile Coaching Wheel, and it's made by a company called Biliminal. If you are very interested in kind of the role of a Scrum Master and the different sorts of principles that are needed to become a successful Scrum Master, then it's worth looking at this set of ideas as different things that you can work on. I've put a link down there at the bottom, but I'll also make sure to include this on My Dundee in case you want to look at this in a bit more detail. The idea here is that we've got to try and identify areas that we want to improve upon from inside of this circle of items that look at knowing yourself, knowing the team, knowing the business, and knowing the organization, and then trying to figure out where you sit as an individual in terms of all of these different activities. And this can be going from a beginner where you might know the theory, but I don't really have much practical experience of how things can work, all the way through to being a guide and an innovator where you have the capability to change your own behaviors and attitudes to meet the current situation and to innovate new techniques. And there's lots of different steps for each of these and how you can try and identify where you sit in, say, being able to mentor others or to being able to guide a process or being able to consider others' mindsets. And the Agile Coaching Wheel is something you might want to consider if you are ever wanting to look at that. The last set of people inside of a Scrum environment is the development team. So the development team are really there to do a lot of the groundwork to actually carry out all of these tasks that we're wanting people to do. Development teams are meant to be structured and empowered by the organization that they're working for to organize and manage their own work. Because of this, the resultant energy within the team is used to kind of push the work and to kind of improve efficiency and effectiveness. We really expect our development teams to be self-organizing. Like I've said before, we might tell you what to do, but we're not going to tell you how to do it. We want you to be cross-functional. So again, master of one thing, but able to take up lots of different tasks as well. The development team is also able to recognize that they are a team and that no one person inside of the team is ultimately responsible for all of the tasks. It's up to the team as a whole to be in charge of everything that's going on. The other thing that's important within a Scrum team is that there's no sub-teams. We don't split them half doing this and half doing something else. The team works as a whole and should be working like this for the entirety of a sprint and the entirety of a project. Individual team members might have specialized roles or specialized abilities, but they do work as part of this group that work together. So that's a very brief summary of the roles that exist inside of Scrum. We've got the product owner, the person that's responsible for ensuring that the team is doing the right thing. We've got the Scrum Master, the person that's responsible for ensuring that the team is doing things right. And we've got the development team that's responsible for just doing things. Hopefully all of that together helps you understand a little bit more about how you might fit into a Scrum team and how you can better organize your team for the coursework inside of this module. In the next video, we're going to move on to talk a little bit more about some of the other aspects of Scrum and how you can also put these to practice in your work.